Hello everybody and welcome back. Thank you for joining me. I was contacted by a lovely lady and she'd had an experience many years ago in childhood, and that experience has stayed with her throughout her life, and she'd been trying to find answers to explain what she saw or how it was even possible. She searched online and found others who had experienced the very same things as her. She saw a strange man-like creature that others claim is impossible, but like myself and many others, that impossible creature we looked at that day was real. So real, it's still with us to this day, decades later. And the old questions of how and who and what never go away. And hopefully, by sharing her story with others, Kay can finally find some answers, and hopefully find others who have had the same experience and are out there thinking they too are alone. This is what Kay had to say. I had a strange experience as a child and I'd like to share it. I'm hoping to shed some light on what happened to me that day and some help in working out what he was. I was somewhere between 5 and 7 years old, and I was in the local woods in Stanley, County Durham. I was with some of the children, they were older than me, and we were just playing out as children do. The girls I was with were about 13 years old, around that age, and they were nice, sensible girls. Where I lived back then, there were lots of fields and small woods, but it wasn't remote or dense or anything like that. It was an average town really, with surrounding countryside and greenbelt land, some small woods and streams. As we were playing, I looked up into a tree, and high in the branches I could see a man. He was crouching down and he was holding a knife in his hand. He wasn't like a normal man. I called him an ApeMan or a monkey man, and he reminded me of a caveman or a wild man. I've included a picture I found online that resembles what I saw that day. I can't remember a lot of detail about his appearance. He had long, bushy, dark hair and he wore no clothes. I pointed him out to the girls and they looked up, but they said no one was there. I ran from the woods crying in fear, with the girls chasing after me, and they always insisted no one was there, which in a way was worse. I was hoping they would say it was just someone dressed up to explain it away and explain why he was there, but they never did. He wasn't like a Bigfoot or what I'd imagined they would look like, but he wasn't like a normal man either. I know for sure I definitely saw him that day, and it frightened me to think that the girls I was with hadn't seen him, and there is no explanation of who or what he was. Has anyone heard of anything like this? I looked at some images on Google, and the one I've included seems very familiar. I'm going to speak to my parents and see if they can remember additional info I told them back then as a child. Little did Kay know that we had another reader in the same Facebook group who saw Kay's posts and got in touch with us, and he too had had an encounter in the very same town many years later. And that's kind of how it works sometimes, and I think you'll notice that that's a pattern. And there also seems to be a pattern, as many of the regular listeners have pointed out to me in the last couple of videos. Small kids playing out, normally within trees and even strangely with rope swings, that see these strange, hairy, ape-like, caveman-like creatures. So, as I say, somebody else got in touch. And this is what he had to say. Hi Deborah, I contacted you when I saw in the British Bigfoot Facebook group a post by a lady in an area close to where I had a strange experience in 2006. This also happened in Stanley in the northeast, a short walk away from where the lady saw her 8-man creature up in a tree whilst playing as a child. And I wonder if it was the same thing I saw many years later. I think Kay described it as an 8-man or a monkey man, and I was hoping to chat with you, as there is another location along that same road where I used to ride my bicycle between my girlfriend's house and where I used to live back then. It was on this certain part of the road that I always felt like I was being watched, pardon me, by something. A feeling I had a few times along that road, It always felt like something I couldn't see was watching me from the shadows. I knew something was there, but I could never see anything or make it out in the shadow, as it would often be late at night when I would be returning home, and it was usually dark. And on one occasion, I saw something big standing behind a large tree near the graveyard next to the church. I believe whatever it was, it had followed me as I rode along the whole of that road, until I got to the main road and the feeling was gone. I didn't have the feeling I was being watched as long as I was off the main part of the road. But when you left that main part and went into the smaller bit, then you'd feel it. The night in question, I was on my way to my girlfriend's house, so the time would have been around 8 p.m. We both lived in County Durham, but in different towns, so I rode this route a lot. I used to cycle to my girlfriend's house, and she lived in the Stanley area, and I would bike it from my house to hers, and then back later in the evening. The area itself is on the coast-to-coast path, in between Concert and Stanley, and it's mostly fields with woods along the main road, and it runs alongside farmland, and there's a few dense patches of woodland here and there. At the Concert side of the route, there's a church with a graveyard and a dense row of trees at the other side of the path behind the church. And as soon as I got onto the path that night, I got the feeling I was being watched again. So I looked around everywhere, but again I couldn't see anything, so I just continued on with my journey. When I was on my way home, it only took me about 10 to 15 minutes to get to the church, and I heard a noise behind the trees, where earlier I'd felt something was watching me, and it was coming from exactly that area. So I slowed down to get a good look. I waited while my eyes adjusted, and I saw the shape of a large, dark figure, which was standing behind a tree, and it was really tall, roughly about 7 to 7.5 feet in height. I couldn't make out any facial features or fine detail as it was too dark, and the only light I had to see by was on the front of my bike. I didn't want to stick around, and I had no thoughts of approaching it to see what it was or to get a closer look, so I quickly left. Now, it would usually take about 10 minutes for me to get to the end of the path, and that night I did it in about 4 minutes flat. This area has a lot of open land and trees, and close to the end of this path, on one section, there's a series of about 6 short hairpin type turns. There's a small narrow track for bikes to use, and it's sided with 10-foot high embankments on either side of the bike trail. These turns go around, and they are big and go deep enough back that something or someone could hide just around the next corner or up on the banks and not be seen until it was too late. So obviously I passed this information on to Kay, and it's what I call a validation report. 30 years apart in the same area, 2 completely different people describe a strange experience. And as we said before, is it the area itself that puts out these experiences, or is it just coincidental? I don't know. But there seems to be a pattern forming. Young children, as I said before, playing out, seeing strange creatures that stay with them until, late into adulthood, and where they feel then that they can discuss it, and it's more and more and more of these accounts are coming forward. I always thought that it would slow down and we'd get where we just got 1 or 2 accounts every year. And obviously these are historical accounts, so I wonder just how many more people are out there thinking, once again, that they are the only person that saw this strange creature, ApeMan, figure, whatever you want to call it. People are seeing strange creatures, are experiencing strange happenings, are seeing shadowy figures. So let's keep reporting them, let's keep getting them out there. So until next time, I'm sorry I've been slow with emails, but as a lot of you know, I've got some things going at home. My dad's really poorly, and as you can imagine, that's my priority at the moment. But I'll be back, don't worry, I'll be around somewhere, and I'll get through them as quickly as I can. So until next time, thanks to everybody on Facebook and YouTube for your messages of support and people in email and everything. So good night.